All right, so we got our painting Tulip Farm today, and I have, let's see, red, white, blue, yellow, green, and orange for this one. If you have a brown, that might be helpful also. Or you can mix colors. I don't know, I wasn't sure how many colors you had.
I got Lagavs, I'm good.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'm gonna start with the big brush, and I'm just gonna wet that off in the water jar, and I'm gonna work the painting background and foreground. So I'm gonna start with the sky, and I'm gonna dip the big brush. I dipped it in the water jar, and now I'm gonna blot that on the paper towel and dip that in the white paint and then the blue paint. And I'm gonna go about halfway down the canvas with that. And I kind of mix the colors on the canvas as I go. You could mix a light blue on your mixing plate and then apply it though, if you wanna be more certain of your color. So it's mostly white and just a little bit of blue mixed in. And I'm going to go about halfway down the canvas. You just want to make sure you go at least as far down as the mountains so that you don't get a gap in the sky where the valleys of the mountains are. And I'm going straight across with my brush strokes here. It kind of depends on how smooth you want your sky. In the sample that I have, the sky has a lot of texture. So there's a lot of long brush strokes showing, and some of the color blue is darker and some lighter. So that's an option. Otherwise, you could just mix it up really smooth if you want a really robin's egg blue sky. And you can go really as far down on your canvas as you want to go. Just make sure you go beneath the horizon line. I think I'm going to just leave it off at halfway down on mine because I plan to make the mountains a little bit higher than that. All right, and once you have that blue sky on there, you can let that dry a little bit. I do mix water with the paint as I go. If you thin down the paint with a little bit of water, it'll actually dry a bit faster. All right, and so, and once we have the sky in there, we can put some clouds in as well. And in my sample here, we have these really wild kind of swirly clouds. It's totally up to you. These are really easy ones. I switched to a medium-sized brush. I just left my big brush in the water jar. We don't want the brush to dry out. We want to be able to clean it later, so I just leave it sitting in the water jar. But I'm getting out the medium-sized brush, and the clouds on this painting are just really fun. You dip the medium-sized brush in white, and you just swirl it around in all different kind of swirly or S-shaped brush strokes, and get those crazy shapes going. If you want to make them look more realistic, then mix a lot of water with the white paint and water it down, and then you can make more small spiral brush strokes and make little puffy, more realistic clouds. But for the purposes of this painting, the clouds really stand out and give the sky a lot of interest, I think. So I'm just doing that with this medium-sized brush, and I'm just going wild with these big swirled around brush strokes over my blue sky. And I'm making two big clouds left and right, and then a couple clouds left and right that go off the sides edge of the painting too. So you can put those in there. Hold that up so you can see a little closer too. Those just little swirly, whirly clouds. I want to make sure you give you time to make those clouds. Are you all caught up with that? She's on mute.
I'm good.
Oh, okay, good.
Paint on my face already?
So now we want to get our horizon line of cloud or mountains going. So I'm going to use my medium-sized brush, and we do have it's brown paint, and I actually don't have brown on here, so I'm going to have to mix some up. So I'm going to take, if you have brown, then you can just go ahead and put in a low horizon of clouds, and I have, or of mountains, and I have about 5 hills going across here, and they're pretty low profile, so only about 2 fingers high. But I'm going to use on my plate red paint, a little blue, and a little green to make a brown. kind of an odd little mixture, but once I have that with my medium-sized brush, I can just bump those up. And it's good if your hand shakes in this case, because I don't want them to be straight up and down little triangles with straight edges. I want the texture of the surface of the mountains to be a little bumpy. So I'm just going up and down and making some of these little mountains higher and some lower, kind of give it a little variety. But I'm doing about 5 or so going across that canvas. And again, I mixed a little bit of red paint, a little bit of green. That'll get you brown. And I added a little blue in it just to darken it up on my plate. If you have brown though, that'll be a lot easier. And then you can fill in anywhere beneath your horizon line with that color. And actually you can go all the way down to the bottom edge of the canvas with that. I guess if you wanted a little brighter color, you could add a little yellow to that too, but I'm going to stick with that darker color there. This would be kind of an interesting blend. So yeah, complementary colors, red and green make brown. If you didn't have that in the set. And we can add a little yellow in there to kind of brighten that up. And that's what that'll look like. I kind of like to mix as I go. Let me hold that up and get a nice interesting color blend there. Kind of like how that's shaping up. And since we have a lot of canvas to cover, you can use a bigger brush for that. I started out with the medium size so I could get a nice edge to that horizon line, but now I'm going to fill in beneath that. And I'm going all the way down the canvas with that color. Although I'm adding more yellow in at the bottom because I like the idea of the color change there. It's kind of interesting. And I'm just going wild with the brush strokes, different directions. I add a little more blue on the right hand side here too. I kind of like the opportunity to blend different colors as I go. And I'm going all the way around the edge of the canvas where it wraps too. I always like to finish that edge up. That's what that looks like. It's called a gallery wrap, and that way I won't need a frame for it when I hang it up. We will put this original up for sale at Sipping and Painting Hampton, and you can hang it up in your house and it'll be all nice and finished. I'm doing that bottom edge that was resting on the easel. With my blend of red, green, yellow, I got them all going now. And let me get that far side before I forget that side too. All right, and I kind of use short brush strokes on the bottom there to give it a lot of different texture too. We're going to cover a lot of that up with our rows of flowers, but I just thought that was kind of fun. You can smooth it out though if you want real smoothed out this kind of looks like a farm in a way, so you could have like a real smooth underneath texture as well. And now swishing my brushes around in the water jar to clean those off and let that dry a minute. And I'm just going over some of my clouds. They kind of dried a little clear, so while I was waiting for the ground to dry, I'm going over the clouds with another layer of white because mine came out a little bit see-through. And while I have white on the brush, that medium-sized brush, I'm going to mix that into the color I already had on the plate that I was using for the ground. Just that green, red. I mean, if you have brown, you can just mix a little white with brown. And there's a little cabin there, right off center. It's towards the right-hand side of the canvas. And it's just a little square-shaped cabin with a triangle on top.
It's actually a windmill.
And it's just a real small little windmill there. It's about the height of my thumb, so not very big at all. I'll hold that up, and that's what that looks like up close. Just a little square with a triangle on top. That's why I started that. And if you want, you can put a little, there's a little door and window in that building too. Looks more like a house to me. So I'm gonna use my little skinny brush and some blue paint. I'm gonna put a little rectangular door and square window on that little windmill. Maybe I'll add some red paint in there as well. And that's what that looks like. Just one door and one window on our little cabin. And I guess to make it look like a windmill, we got to add that X-shaped little turning blade. So I cleaned off that little skinny brush by swishing it around in the water jar, and I blotted it on paper towels, and I'm just going to get some green to make that X-shaped little wind turbine blades up there, just coming off the peak of that roof. And that looks like a little windmill. And while I have the green on the brush, I think I'll add some greenery at the bottom of the house too. I'm just gonna add just little bushes or shrubs down by the corner of the house there. Just at the base. You can see that. It's so dark against my background. I think I'll add a little white. I want it to be totally white, but just to brighten it up on those edges. It stands out a little bit. Just kind of make it a rough little edge there to make it stand out. with my lighter paint. I want it a little contrasty so it looks to come off those hills visually. So that's what that looks like, a little left and right, a little bit of brighter paint, and then a little white on the roof there. And now my background has had a chance to dry, so we can put in our rows of flowers. So we do have kind of a Tulip Farm theme going here, and so we have rows of different colors, and it depends on what you have in your color set. I'm kind of limited with mine, so I can do a lot of mixing, but we do have rows of let's see, purple, blue, pink, yellow in this sample, and they're bordered by greenery on either one side or the other, and some of those rows even both. So I'm going to use my little skinny brush, and I'm going to start with mixing this. I cleaned off that little skinny brush, swished it around in the water jar, and blotted it on the paper towel, and I'm going to pick up some white paint and yellow paint and mix that around on the plate. And when I make these rows, they're very elongated triangles. So they're going to start at the bottom edge of the canvas, and they're all going to point towards the middle. This imagine an imaginary middle point right in the center of the canvas at the base of the mountains. So all of those rows, imagine that they're kind of leaning towards this point. So let's say I'll start that point with yellow here to make that real obvious. So that's just to the left side of my house. And then I'm going to go diagonally away from that, just dabbing that little skinny brush in a diagonal all the way down to the bottom edge of that canvas. And I want to make that a kind of a triangle, so it'll be wider at the base. So I'm going to stretch that out into a triangle there, my little dabby dots, and go back up to that point on the other side of the triangle. So it comes to a long skinny point. And that's white mixed with yellow, and just dotting that with that little skinny brush. And that'll be my first row. And some of that I actually mixed less. So some of those little dots have more white in them than yellow. So it doesn't, I don't mix the paint really carefully because it gives it a nice variety. So you get lighter yellow and darker yellow. So it's, I mixed up a little white with yellow on the plate, but some of it's more, then I just grabbed a little white paint with the brush, and some of them are lighter colored dots. But I used that little skinny brush to dab that very elongated triangle on there, and I made a dot to the left of that house, and then go diagonally all the way down to the bottom edge and make it a triangle. And the whole row at the bottom is about 2 or 3 fingers wide. It's not very wide at the very base there. So just a long skinny triangle. I'll clean my brush off. I could skip it to I was looking at the sample, and there's another yellow row to the far left, but I think it'll be easier to make the rows next to it, and then we'll reach over to the farther rows. So I cleaned off that little skinny brush so I could put the pink row next to it. And so for that, I'm gonna take my clean brush, dip it in the white paint, and I always, when I'm mixing paint, start with the lighter color first and then add the darker color. So I mixing it around, picking up a lot of white paint and then some red to make pink. And you won't need very much red, just a little bit. And once you have that mixed together on your mixing plate, you can put a dot next to that row. So just to the left of that first row. And I'm gonna go all the way down, sort of parallel to that first line. But the other side of the triangle is going to be a diagonal to the left. So again, I'm dabbing that little skinny brush, dot, 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 all the way down. To the bottom edge of the canvas. And I'm actually going to go all the way underneath. I got to finish that gallery wrap, so I'm going to go underneath where the canvas wraps those stretcher bars too. That's what that looks like on the underneath part. So I have two very long triangles next to each other, and they're leaning towards each other at the top. The little tippy tops come together, and that's the theme we're going to use as we create these rows. I did leave a little space between them too. That's about as wide as one finger, so I can see my background through there. So, you can see that on there. But now I'm going to clean off that little skinny brush again. And the third row on my sample here is purple. So I'm going to pick up on my set here some white paint, and then a little bit of blue and a little bit of red. Mix myself up a lavender. Hopefully it'll come out lavender. We'll see what we get. White paint to start, because you always want to start with the lightest color and then adding in a little blue, a little bit of red. And you can balance that out. If it looks too red, you can add a little more blue into it, not like mine does here. So we get a nice lavender color. You can see that up there. And then I'm going to make another dot just to the left of my first two rows. And I am leaving spaces between these rows. So let me hold that up so you can see. Third little dot that's just to the left of my first two rows, and then going again parallel down next to my last row. Dot, 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 with that little skinny brush. Just dabbing that little skinny brush, tap, tap, tapping it to the canvas, kind of smashing it into the canvas, if you will, and then a little bit wider at the bottom so that my triangle is about 2 fingers wide at the very bottom edge of the canvas. And that's how my little purple row looks. So you can see they're all kind of leaning together at the top edge there. So they're coming towards this center middle of the canvas, and they're all the points are going down in a triangular way to the bottom of the canvas. So we want to keep reaching them out. They're going to go further and further. As they get further and further out to the left and right hand sides of the canvas, the diagonals are going to get more dramatic. So they're going to pull more to the left and right hand sides of the canvas, if you will. So I'm going to lean that next diagonal out even further to the left. And I'm going to leave, there's actually a little more space between the next two rows, but we're back to pink. So I cleaned off that little skinny brush, and I'm mixing up white paint and red paint together. Get my pink back. I kind of ran out. So, and if you need to stretch out the paint a little, since it's acrylic paint, you can mix it with a little bit of water and thin it out a little bit, and it'll it'll kind of stretch out the existing paint that you have. You'll have a little bit more if you mix it with the water. And I'm going to make another point a little bit further away this time from that row, maybe about 2 fingers from that last purple row. And then now I am kind of continuing to go down parallel to that last purple row with this pink line, but it is reaching a little bit further down to the left side of the canvas. So the angle is getting more dramatic as we go. So then when I make this when I widen that triangle out, it's going to be even more leaning to the left there. That diagonal line coming back up to my point at the top. Because we're kind of making these rows appear in perspective where we're having them reach towards a vanishing point. And I'm just making the left and right edges. I'm dabbing these on dot, dot, dot with the little skinny brush, and I'm not trying to make straight edges. I'm making a lot of dots along the edge, so it's kind of a scalloped, bumpy edge to those rows. You can see it's not a neat line. It's just kind of messy. Messy and fun. And that's my next pink row. And actually there's another pink row on, actually, I don't know, it's kind of a red pink on the other side of the windmill there. So I'm gonna make that row. Now we're kind of skipping over, so I'm gonna make a dot on the other side of that. I'm adding a little more, I have that down here, but I'm adding a little more red paint to that pink. And I'm gonna make a dot on the right-hand side where that cabin is. Right there. But remember, we want to keep these in perspective. So this row is going to reach more diagonally towards the bottom right-hand side of this canvas. We want to lean this row in so that it's really pointing at more of an angle towards the middle of the canvas. So we want to pull that out towards the lower right-hand side. So I'm making a diagonal towards the lower right-hand side of this canvas. And you can see it kind of parallels that yellow row, but it reaches even more at an angle towards the right. And then we want to go more dramatic with that. So we're gonna pull that out with a triangular base that's about 2 fingers wide at the bottom of the canvas there, and make that triangle, that long triangle, back up to the point on the right-hand side of our windmill. And that's more of a red paint I went with. You can make it more pink or more red, or make it a variety. I'll add a little more white so we have some flowers that kind of poke out, and we get a variety of values. The values, the lightness or darkness of the paint. So we'll get some that are lighter value and some that are darker value. That's what that looks like. And it looks like I have another, well, I was gonna say I have another row, but I think it's just more, looking at my sample, I think there's a couple more red flowers in the last row I painted on the left-hand side there. So I'm gonna add a little red in there too. That way we'll have a variety of color of flowers in our row. So just dotting that with a little bit of red over my pink. So I have nice variety of different color flowers in my tulip rows. And right now we can see that whole background beneath it, but we're going to put some greenery on the edges as well. First, I'm getting all that color in there, which is fun to work with. So next, it looks like I have purple on the right-hand side here. So I'm going to clean off that brush, that skinny brush, and mix up a little bit of red and blue. And I have a really dark blue here on the set that I'm using. So I am going to add a little bit of white in there to lighten that up, because I don't want it to be totally dark. We want to be able to tell it's purple. So just a little bit of white in there. In this case, I usually start with the white and then mix the color into it, but I wanted a pretty dark purple, so I started with the red and blue and I added a little white. So that's the exception to the rule of mixing there. But I'm going to go to the right-hand side of that red row that I just did on the right and put another dot about an inch away, and then parallel that line from the red row down. And this is going to reach almost all the way to the corner of my canvas. We're gonna actually go over that diagonal line reached almost to the corner, but I'm going to pull that out to the corner of the canvas and then come back up with my triangle. So that's how that perspective is getting created. We're coming out more and more dramatically with our diagonal lines. And that's with my purple paint. And that's so dark that I think I'm gonna add some lighter flowers in there. Add a little more white to some of them. And I did that, I didn't clean off the brush, I just dipped it in the white paint, and it's kind of mixing on the canvas because I had wet paint and I'm painting right over it. So it's, as I dab that on there, I'm getting a little mixture. You can also, of course, mix it right on the plate and then add it in if you want to be more certain of the color. But I wanted to, again, give a variety of values. Some of these flowers are darker and some are lighter. You can also darken some up with blue if you like. Oh, I like that. We have a whole variety here. Let me hold that up so you can see it. There's all kinds of different color in there. Red and white and blue. Mixing our little purple, and it's a nice color variety of flowers in there. And we have our darker rows in this painting. The darker rows of purple, blue, and then purple are concentrated on the right-hand side of the canvas, and we have some light rows on the left-hand side. And so I'm gonna stick with that color pattern, and I'm gonna clean off that skinny brush again so I can get my light paint going on the far side. And so white paint mixed with yellow, mixing that up on my mixing plate, and another dot just to the left of my pink row, and I'm gonna go diagonally, stretching that down to the edge of the bottom edge of the canvas. And you can stretch that diagonal out more dramatically to the left-hand side. Leave a little more space between the row on the bottom there. And then I'm gonna go all the way, just like I did on the right-hand side, all the way to the corner of the canvas to pull that triangle back up to that point. And here again, white mixed with yellow, and I'm dipping the brush in both the white and yellow, and I'm not actually mixing it on the plate so much as on the canvas. Kind of adjusting it as I go on the canvas. And that's okay if I was kind of messy there, and kind of one jumped right out of the row, but that's okay, it's nature. Maybe one grew a little bit out of its row, and it gives a nice texture to those rows. It makes it look kind of natural. And I am actually I'm dotting the paint on here this whole time, dot, dot, dot. And so you can see some of the color of the ground beneath the rows because I left a little bit of holes showing through. If you haven't, that's okay too. You can always go back and put that earlier color. You could dot that into your rows and it would appear like that, but it's okay to leave it showing through too. Kind of leave it open as you dot the paint on there so you can see the color right through that. Oops, I just painted my arm. Get a little painty. Swishing that brush around. Oh, I didn't even have to because my last row is also yellow, but it's even a lighter yellow, so that's okay. It's okay if we clean the brush. I can add a little more white to the paint this time, make it an even brighter yellow. Or I could, that's up to you. You can make it a little orangey. I had this bright orange on this plate. I'm just tempted to add, I'm gonna add a little bit in there because I just think that's fun. And we'll make that an orangey yellow row. And here the point is another inch to the left here, but I'm gonna pull it all the way out. It doesn't even go to the bottom edge of the canvas. It actually goes off the left-hand side, kind of paralleling down my last row. But there's no room at the bottom anymore, so the diagonal reaches all the way to the left-hand side of the canvas. And then going up the canvas side to widen that triangle out, and then bringing it back up to that point. That was an inch away from my last row. Dot, dot, dot. With a little bit of orangey, white, yellow. And remember to go all around the edges too, so you can continue that gallery wrap look. Finish those edges out. I just went underneath, oops, see if you can see that underneath to finish that gallery wrap edge. You can see all my rows, they turn under so that when you hang it up, you can see the, oh, gotta make sure they're all there. You can see the little rows, they bend right around the edge of the canvas and it gives it a nice finished look. Oh, I forgot my pink row here. Make sure you do all of them so that when you hang this, we hang our sipping and paintings right up the staircase, and when you go up the stairs you'll be able to see that bottom edge of the canvas, and it's nice if that illusion continues around the edge. Make sure you get all those edges. I gotta put some of my purple there. I forgot to do it when I was painting them. Doing that corner there, got my purple row. And actually, while I have that darker purple on my brush, I'm going to add a couple of darker tulips to my earlier purple row. I think that I like the contrast in colors by giving them different values. Some lighter, some darker purple gives it a nice texture to my tulip rows. That's, I'll hold that up closer. You can see the lighter and darker purple and the lighter and darker pinks and yellows, and it's just all those little dots gives it a nice variety. I like this painting as kind of an impressionist painting. It really reminds me of a Monet. Monet did windmills, I think, right? I can't remember, but it just seems very, very French. I like that. Oh, and I forgot, I have one more row on the right-hand side. Better put that in. There's another dark purple row that reaches right to the right-hand side of the canvas. So we want to make sure we put that in. I could even do it. Oh, there's two more. There's two more. There's a blue one and a purple one. So let me do the blue. That's with a clean, skinny brush, mixing that white paint on the brush and some dark blue. My blue is so dark. I'm starting with the white to lighten it up. And when I got that mixed, I'm going to go to the right-hand side of that row. Oh, I didn't mix it well enough to get it dark. Make some dark blue. I'm paralleling that last purple row, but going this, I ran out of room on the bottom edge, so I'm going right off the right-hand side of the canvas with that, and we're gonna go move up the canvas to widen out that triangle, just like we did on the far side, and then bring it back up to that point. And that's my blue row. So a long triangle that reaches off the right-hand side. I'm going to put some darker ones in there too, just using that dark blue as it came out of the package. So I have that variety of values. I've got the blue I mixed with white, so a mid-range blue, and now some darker blue tulips there. And that's how that looks. A long triangle reaching right off the right-hand edge of the canvas and all the way around to complete that gallery wrap. And then one more row of the dark purple. So if you still have that mixed up on your plate, you can use that dark purple. I'm going to mix a little bit more red and blue together and a touch of white to get my purple there again. And then making another point to the right-hand side of that blue row, a little triangle. This is a very small one because the edge of the canvas is so nearby. I'm paralleling that last blue row and going right off the right-hand side of the canvas. And actually, the top of that triangle is almost a flat line across because the angle has gotten so dramatic as we moved across the canvas. So it's actually kind of a straight line. You can see that it's almost flat to the horizon. Kind of neat. And you can see they all reach towards the center, those rows, because they're kind of going towards a vanishing point there on our canvas. We got it in perspective. So now that I have all of these bright, happy little tulip colors, I can add some greenery between them. We had that green windmill on our cabin there, and we have some greenery down by the lower edge of that cabin, and so we want to take that color and move it throughout the canvas, kind of spread the green around to move your eye around the composition. So we're going to put leaves on our little tulips on the edges. So I cleaned off that little skinny brush, and now you can mix a little bit of white paint with your green. It depends on how dark your green is. Mine is, it comes out of the container really dark, so I'm mixing a little bit of white in with it. And I also have found with acrylic paint, the white acts as a bit of a primer, so that makes the color less see-through. It depends on your particular paint, but some acrylic paints tend to be a little see-through, so white makes them cover better when you mix it with the paint. So using that little skinny brush and a little white and green together, I'm just going to go up along. I'm going to start all of the greenery on the right-hand sides of those rows. So I'm starting from the farthest row, but on the right-hand side of that yellow row, just dotting, tap, tap, tapping back and forth with little dots. And this is not a straight line. I'm kind of zigzagging back and forth over that row. And they don't have to be, you can even like leave some gaps between those dots. They don't have to all connect. We want to make them look like just little leaves or petals, or yeah, I guess leaves on the bottoms of the flowers. So going along the right-hand side of that row, and some of those dots can be bigger and some smaller. And I'm actually making a little bit smaller as I move up the row towards the point. So the bigger dots are towards the bottom edge of the canvas, and the littler dots are towards the tops of those triangles. And it's okay if you make the occasional one more in the middle of your pile of tulips too, just one or two. You know, it doesn't have to be a lot. Let me show you what that looks like close up so you can see what I'm talking about. There's one or two not connected to the whole set there that jump into the row, so that it's a little off balance and you get that very natural, open nature look. You know, nature's not perfect. Even though this is a farm, it's still a little bit on the random side nature. Sometimes your flowers jump the row a little bit, and it opens it up a little. It gives the place where the rabbits can jump through into your flower beds, right? We have a lot of rabbits in this neighborhood jumping into the gardening. So once I have that first row done, I can continue to make greenery, and I'm gonna stick to the right-hand sides. There, we'll come back. We'll fill in some of the left-hand side. For now, I'm gonna start with all the right-hand sides. So white mixed with green, dot, 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 back and forth. And remember, not a continuous line, just back and forth, tap, tap, tapping, left and right, but to the right-hand side of my color row. So to the right-hand side of that yellow. And little smaller dots as I move up, maybe bigger presses to the canvas with that skinny brush, bigger dots as I go to the bottom. I'm even making that a little bit wider, that green area, as I reach the bottom. And remember to go around the underneath part too, so that green row gets a little wider at the bottom as well. So we got our leaves going in there, and we can continue that up each row. Tap, tap, tap. It's kind of an impressionistic, kind of stippled up there. Like Seurat. We're calling to mind all the impressionistic painters tonight. Little Monet, little Seurat. Monet had a kind of different brush stroke, a little much bigger than Seurat, I think. They did different things. Seurat used more stronger colors, but smaller dots. And Monet had a lot of pastel colored, bigger brush strokes. Very big canvases. I don't know if you've ever seen them live, but they're big canvases. We're just working on a 16 by 20, very modest sized canvas tonight, so we don't need very big brush strokes. But I'm going up all the right-hand sides of those rows. And if I don't have a lot of room, this purple row didn't have a lot of room between, so I don't have to get very wide with those, that row of greenery. But just dotting, and I'm going back and forth so they don't all look like, it doesn't look like a line, just tap, tap, tapping those on there. And you can see it draws your eye from that little greenery that's down by the windmill. I just went over that little bushes there so you could see them stand out. And now it's kind of spread around the canvas. I even made, it kind of connects there to that yellow row that I'm working on. Let me hold that up so you can see just like a little greenery connecting the house. And I'm gonna do my remaining rows too. Greenery up the right-hand sides, tap, tap, tapping that on there. In this last row, there's just a couple, putting a couple right on top. They're still to the right-hand side, but they're actually on top because that row lays so flat, that last purple row. Whoop, fell off my easel. And that's what that looks like, that last one. And we can do some greenery. I don't want to do it on the right-hand sides of every row of flowers, but I just do want to indicate some of those have some greenery on the right-hand side. So I just using that little skinny brush and mixing myself a little bit more light green. And now it depends on your particular rows. Like some of them might be more crowded. And if you have ones that are more open, like I have a more open space between this purple and pink row, I'm going to add just a little bit of greenery on the right-hand side here. So a few taps there, and it doesn't, I'm not going to fill them in quite as much as I did on the right-hand side. It's just much more open, like a fewer little dots as I go up. Just one here and there at the top. So, and I'm not going to do that on every row. I just want to kind of give it an unbalanced look. So we'll just do that on a few rows. So that's on my purple one here because I had a little bit more space between the purple and pink. And I'm going to do that here on my pink row that is to the right of my house. And not as many taps this time going up, just a little more open. It kind of is in a line, but just much more open. Just a few taps of green going up that row. And then I'm going to do that little, remember I had that wild yellow flower that jumped out here? I'm going to put some wild greenery around that. That'll be my other. And this is where, as the artist, you want to step back and take in the whole work, because this is where you can use the artist's eye decision-making process and decide where that green is necessary, because I don't want to make this formulaic and make lines going up each row. I'm just going to put wherever I feel maybe just a touch of green would either smooth out a weird brush stroke or add a place for your eye to jump back to that green. I'm just going to add a brush stroke here and there. So just kind of your, wherever you feel it, it needs just a little bit of interest. I just put 2 dots on that blue row, for example. Doesn't need a lot. And how about like 1 on this purple row on the bottom part? And that just gives a little variety. It makes it unbalanced so that it's not an expected pattern. Since this is nature, we want to make it look natural. It just gives a little unexpectedness there. Oh, I'll add a little dot next to that. You always want to make sure you stand back from that. That windmill kind of got lost in my background. I feel like it's real dark against my mountains here, so I'm going to use lighter green to pull that out. Since I have that on the brush, I'm just going to use that lighter green. Make that windmill show a little bit better. I can't even see it. Make sure we know what this painting is about. There we go. Another windmill showing. Looks like a nice windy day with those wild clouds up there too. All right, we got our tulip farm in there. I think that is most of the details there on our little tulip farm. And this painting is going to go up for sale at Sipping and Painting Hampton. We also do have these cute little masks that have our little brand on them, so you can come in and get those from the shop. We actually have impressionistic ones too. Speaking of impressionists, we have little watercolory masks, and we have kits for painting your own, so that's fun. We also do have painting kits for grown-ups and kids, so you can come get those. And look on our upcoming schedule for the upcoming paintings. They're doing a painting in the shop tonight. You can go into the shop and do some painting, or else we'll have Zoom classes as well. So here we go. We can make sure you do also, I left my brushes in the water jar so I can clean them later. Make sure you take a little bit of soap in your hand and spin those brushes around with a little bit of liquid soap in your hand, scrub them real well, and then wash them out until the water's clear to clean those brushes. But before you do that, make sure you sign your painting. I'm gonna get the water off that little skinny brush, just wiping that on the paper towel there, and make sure you sign your painting in the corner. We always want to make sure everybody knows who did the work of art. I always put my initials in the corner to sign these. There we go. And there we are. And I don't know if you've painted quite as fast as I have, but I'd love to see your painting. If you want to hold yours up, we can take a little picture together and we can show what we've painted tonight. You can see your painting. I always tip mine. Oh, look how pretty. Look at those pretty bright rows. I love it. There we go.
And that barn
Beautiful.
at the top.
Yeah. Fantastic. But take your time painting. We have our little sample painting up there. If you need the samples on the Zoom, you can pull that one screen out, and I'll leave this sitting up here for inspiration. But thank you for joining me for painting our tulip farm today at Virtual Sipping and Painting Hampton.